Mike van der Vijver. Vijver.
That's
I got
very
this
close.
right.
Well done. Yes.
From Holland. I don't know if you guys all know him, but this guy, with a few other people from Northern Europe, started a revolution about 15 years ago, which we can call meeting design, which is okay. It's very nice. I'm gonna give my definition, then you're gonna give a
Okay.
much better one. My definition would be it's very nice to have buses and catering and audiovisuals, but we have to consciously design events taking into account the attendee, the objectives, and probably some human sciences, some understanding about human psychology and behavior, so that we achieve useful events. Mike, first, welcome. Second, how bad
Thank you,
is
Eric.
my definition?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I can add a couple of elements if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, I think the first thing I would like to add is that meetings are a specific form of communications. And
Okay.
um, anything that we use in terms of products, services, communications is actually designed. Websites are designed, corporate brochures are designed, campaigns are designed, but meetings, most of the time, are not specifically designed. And I don't see the point why that shouldn't be the case. So designing means you have a clear purpose in mind. And then with that purpose, you start logically thinking backwards. So if this is what we want to achieve, what should happen in the stages before that, and even what should happen before in this case, meetings or events should actually start. Very simple. It is like you design a cup. So
Yeah.
you want that to be able to hold water, to be able to easily drink from it, to maybe have a handle such as yours so that you can easily hold. These are the design features. It's all about the purpose and the objectives. And then in meetings, because they are a specific form of communications, we have to deal with the live presence of people or online and with content. Now, those things need to come together, and that's what you do as a meeting designer.
Okay. Uh, the thing, I guess most people who organize events would say, "Oh yeah, but I do design my event, taking into account the specific objectives that I have." So, can you explore a bit more? In what respect you think a lot of meetings today are not designed? Because people say, well, I'm going to do a conference on crypto and I'm going to have 5 sessions and I'm going to find speakers and it's going to be interesting. And then there's going to be coffee break. And they think they
Yeah,
design. What is missing in your opinion?
I think what is missing is the awareness of what should happen as a result of putting those people in that room and delivering that content. And once you start thinking in terms of any kind of change, behavior change, attitude change, um, what should be different thanks to the fact that you've had these people there? What should they be doing differently? Like, my sort of my mentor in this, Elling Hamzo,
Yeah.
taught me if you're a fly on the wall in one person's office 6 months after the meeting, what is he going to do differently thanks to the fact that he was in that meeting? Now,
Okay.
that is not on people's radar screen. Yes, content is, and that is absolutely vital because content in meetings is king. Participants are, but not in terms of what the participants should be doing with the content as a result of the meeting. And that's where meeting design comes in. It's not a matter of getting a speaker in and putting a speaker on stage and letting him deliver a presentation. That's not good enough. It doesn't identify what should this person achieve with this particular audience for this or that purpose. And so
Okay.
what happens most of the time is that, yeah, people stack up content in events, as I call it. It's just a stack of sessions. Um, and there is no plan for what those sessions comprehensively should achieve. The second thing, participants are physically present. They are, they bring their bodies along, you know. They're not just
Yeah.
a brain sitting on a chair, but that's how we treat them. We treat them as a brain sitting on a chair. And we don't capitalize on the fact that we need to offer them experiences. because it is experiences that will create the change. You can tell a smoker 100 times that smoking is bad for him. That's not going to change. You can give him figures. You can give him figures about lung cancer incidence. It's not going to change his behavior. What is going to change his behavior? Once the she is pregnant, or once the he has a wife who is pregnant. That's when they get behavior change. So you need to think about what is going to change this person's behavior. Facts and figures are not going to change people's behaviors, but experiences about facts and figures are. And that's what we design for. Sometimes it's called experience design.
Okay, so I understand a much deeper and more thorough focus on understanding the objectives, that the objectives are not just, I'm going to give this content to people, but I'm going to change behavior in a way which ideally can be observed or measured after. And then in the design phase, I mean, the word design is in your naming. In the design phase, I understand there's probably much more involvement of the attendee, probably some innovation in formats. I mean, we're all tired of the theater class, theater style seating, and somebody speaking and everybody listening or WhatsApping. Those the building blocks of the practical change that you see in meetings which are properly designed, which are there. I guess there's participation, there's much more exchange between people, there's innovation in formats.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think the physical experience, just the fact of somebody getting up and moving and going to sit somewhere else with other people is pretty revolutionary. If I propose this to organizers, most of them, it's going to create confusion, it's going to create chaos. And I think that a certain degree of well-structured chaos is necessary in order to give people physical experiences, and therefore the kinds of input that will create the change. Now, it also offers the opportunity for people to network on content, as I call it. So this is generally not done. Networking is, give people a break, give them a coffee, give them alcohol, and you hope that something happens. While networking on content is allowing people in smaller groups to actually have dialogues, conversations for a specific purpose that leads towards the final outcome that you want of the event, and that allow people to meet others and talk about the content. Now, you hope that this happens in the course of the networking breaks, but you're not sure. Whereas if you purposefully design for it, you know it's going to happen. And this you can do with any kind of group and in any kind of setting. I've recently done it with 500 people in a big room. And the only thing you need is to have a really clear plan, structure, good questions to ask for people to think about, which are relevant to them, and a strong moderator who can lead the process.
Yeah, that moderators are an ingredient that's often overlooked. No, it's like, can somebody ask the questions rather than who's going to be the moderator? What do they know? What style of moderation are they going to apply? I guess it's something missing
often,
in a lot of events. No?
Yeah, especially in scientific conferences, the moderator position is kind of an honored job for somebody who is senior, but they don't have any specific skill set for leading a large group of people and offering them experiences.
So if we talk about meetings, it's a bit more meetings than events. I guess there's no fixed rule, but would you agree that first, counting on people listening to a message for them to grasp and believe in this message and change their behavior is an illusion, is crazy, and that behavior change doesn't come from listening to somebody, but comes from maybe listening to somebody and doing something, debating,
Exactly.
exchanging.
Exactly. I think to a very large extent it is an illusion. I have a past of maybe 1,500 meetings maybe that I've done somewhere around that. In my own experience, I think maybe two people have in the course of all of those meetings and events, of all the speakers that I've seen and heard, have led me to change my behavior purely on the basis of listening to them.
But it's still the basis of our industry. We think that
Unfortunately,
either
it is, yes.
the bright speaker or the CEO is going to say something and people are going to believe it. There's an example from your first book. I didn't say it, but you wrote several books, Into the Heart of Meetings and
Yeah.
Meetings by Default or by Design, at least.
Yeah.
Brilliant books. Anybody with a bit of professional self-respect should buy them. And there's a very simple example that you say about this. The example of a bank where they wanted to tell their staff that everybody matters, that we're on the same boat, and that together we can achieve amazing things, and we're all equal. And you were asking that guy, okay, so you want to say that everybody is equal, but you're there in the spotlights on the stage up there, everybody's in the dark, invisible, and so there's a contradiction between your message and the staging. No?
Totally. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's the same thing as saying, oh yeah, we do Q&A at the end of the session, but then people don't have questions. So most of the time it doesn't work. And I think, yeah, of course, you've been sitting in the dark for 45 minutes, listening to somebody up on stage who knows how the world works, and he's just told you how the world works. And then all of a sudden the light goes on, and the moderator says, does anybody have any questions? Are you going to stand up and walk to a microphone? Of course not. Only an American will, because they are they're taught at school that this is what they're supposed to do. And questions lead to perhaps the discovery of truth. But most people are, of course, you're not.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous expectation. So,
but it still happens in 80% of meetings.
I think in 95% of meetings, actually.
Yeah. So there's no to simplify, because there's a whole book, there's a whole science between this behind this concept of meeting design. But to simplify, one thing that people should have in mind is maybe listening time and doing time. I guess there's no strict benchmark, but would you say that probably in a meeting where you're involved, half the time is going to be on exchanging and debating and finding solutions and group work, or because most conferences will have also 90% of listening time and 10% of awkward Q&A, which don't work. Is there a benchmark? Do you have in general, in your experience, is there a majority of time dedicated to group work and discussions?
Well, that really depends a lot on the organizer and how much they are willing to move. So typically, when I start working with clients, we start with something small. We start taking, in the course of an association congress, we change one session and we make that session into something where we're actually, I would say 75% of the time, people are talking to one another, and only 25% of the time they get input from an expert. But the input from the expert is based on what that expert has heard from the participants. So it is much more targeted. It is not a presentation which is based on, hopefully, an idea of what people are expecting. It is on the basis of what the participants have actually already shared in terms of knowledge, insights, ideas, and then you get your expert to add on to that. Now that's fundamentally different, and I think it is really important for the meetings industry to grasp that difference and the value of that difference, because nowadays information is at everybody's fingertips.
Yeah.
I think it is silly to have meetings and to present information in meetings and get people flying over the world, eating lots of food, clogging public transport in destinations, and sitting in dark meeting rooms to listen to somebody. That should no longer happen. When they're there to interact, to build relationships, to get to the next stage of what their knowledge is relevant for, to build trust together, which is so important in today's societies, where the confusion created by populists is making it really hard for people to figure out, where should we be going. So I think the future of meetings is essentially about building relationships of trust between people, which you can only do when you are physically in the same space.
It's true. When you take a bit of distance, it's true. It is ridiculous to say let's fly people from 5,000 kilometers away for them to listen to something that they could perfectly check on the video or on an online article. This being said, it always seems to be very hard to get people to do something before the meeting. I remember an article on a teaching experiment which was done, I don't know if in Holland or in Denmark, which is that half the class was doing the schooling the traditional way. They come like without anything in mind. The teacher tells them the gospel, and then they go home and they do their homework. The other group study the videos or text before the session, and the whole session was not about the teacher talking, but about the dynamics. And you obviously will know that the result with the second group was way better. This doesn't apply in meetings. Is it, or have you tried it? Have you tried saying, you're all going to come to this conference, you have to check these 3 videos and we're going to debate blah, blah, during the conference, and it works?
Yes, yeah. As long as organizers are willing to make that change, it works.
Yeah.
And the important thing there is, you mentioned the title of our second book, which is Meetings by Default or by Design. And the default is very, very strong. There's all kinds of reasons why it is so strong. But the default of people expecting indeed the gospel to be delivered from stage is huge. And the world is so complex that there isn't, in many cases, there is no gospel. The only way to move ahead is to have conversations, to have meaningful dialogue, and together to work on what should be the next stage of what we should be doing and what everybody should be focusing on. So I think it's a huge waste of human potential to do it the traditional way.
We're going to come to that notion of waste, which is a new important idea that you bring related to sustainability. But before that, I wanted to understand why, and I'm sorry, Mike, because you launched breakthrough, extremely powerful ideas. I can't tell you how much I was impressed by that Into the Heart of Meetings book. And if you had asked me then, I would have said, okay, that's it. The change is coming, and we're going to enter a golden era of beautiful events, well designed. I'm sorry, Mike, but the revolution has not worked. Meetings by default are still the norm. Meetings by design are extremely rare. So why? Why is hospitality and the practical side of meetings, the food, the staging, is this eating up all our attention and budget? Why is it so hard? Is there a problem of shame, which could be also that you go to a conference, you sit down with your WhatsApp, and it's comfortable. It's boring, but it's comfortable. And if they say, "Oh, go speak to the other person that you don't know there," maybe there's also a theme of change. I'm trying to understand why not more meetings are properly designed. Why do you think?
Well, I think you already touched on quite a few points. So indeed, both for the audience and for organizers, it's very safe to do it this way. They know it. It's predictable. It's orderly. Everybody sits nicely in rows, and you don't have any chaos. That's good. People buy into that very easily. But there's a couple more things. One is there is a fundamental disconnect between the people who know about meetings or should know about meetings, like planners, and the people who know about content. So very often, for instance, in associations or also in corporate meetings where you have the board of management who needs to deliver the content, they don't really have an idea of what you can do with meetings as a form of communications, what their potential is to create experiences and how those experiences will impact on participants. So the default assumption is classroom lecturing. And then once you start conceiving a meeting, very practically, at the very early stages, the planners go one way. They want to know what room do I need? How many people do I need to fit in? How much food do we need? How many cups of coffee? All really relevant and important. And on a parallel track, but hardly connecting with one another, are the people who do content. And they immediately start thinking, oh, who's the big speaker I need to invite? Who needs to deliver a presentation? What should it be about? What's the content that is relevant for my participants? And these two worlds are not connected.
Yeah.
And as a designer, this is our main task. I don't do production. I don't do anything related to the logistics. And the whole meetings industry is shaped And people have the mindset of that dichotomy. You've got the destinations, and your association comes into the destination and uses the destination for their event. Only very few destinations are moving into thinking about, yeah, but when they come here, what is the impact of all of that? How can we make sure, the legacy thinking that Geneviève Roy is working on, how can we make sure that they leave something behind in our destination and not just as a swarm of locusts come in, sit on chairs, eat the food, and leave again?
Mm.
So the hospitality mindset of thinking this having meetings is good for our economy. So destinations support meetings, but they support it from the view of filling up hotel rooms, getting food
Mm.
eaten, and doing some nice activities which will help some local companies. And I'm afraid, yeah, from my perspective, that is a severe underuse of meetings as a form of communications. And in the long run, it is totally unsustainable because you don't know, you don't even measure what the outcomes of that meeting are. So
Yeah.
how can you think that the resources that you are making available have been deployed properly?
Mm. We regarding your segmentation, I understand this logistics in a broad sense, which includes production, which includes the AV and the
Yeah,
food and the blah, blah.
sure. Yeah.
You got people who know about the content, and these people probably don't know about logistics, but probably don't even know about a layer in between, which is design. I mean, you can be brilliant in content about Bitcoins and in
Yeah.
the Bitcoin conference, but not know how to properly transmit this content and make sure that people can express themselves and ask questions.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I guess we have these three levels, and the problem is that the skills are extremely different in each of these three levels. If you know about content, you don't necessarily know about group dynamics. If you know about group dynamics, you don't necessarily know about logistics. And still, we expect the same entities, event agencies or in-house event planner, to do all this. We expect people to have a brilliant left brain and a brilliant right brain when we should segment more. So you think the future is about segmenting teams much more?
No, I actually think it is about integrating more. So I think that my I think I don't we should in the meetings industry, we shouldn't expect the content people to lead the change. That's not fair. If you're
Yeah.
a cardiac surgeon, you know about heart surgery, and I'm very happy that you do. And I shouldn't expect you to know about how meetings work. But the people in the
Uh,
meetings industry should, and they should go beyond the logistics and the planning and the hospitality side. So, if anything, people like yourself who are influencing the mindsets of people in the meetings industry, I think we really should try and step up the efforts in everywhere. And you see it seeping through here and there. There's some stuff at IMEX, there's some stuff at VExpo, there's some stuff in PCMA, but the big change is not happening. And
uh.
but it should come from inside the meetings industry.
It could be. Sometimes I'm wondering because I get the impression that all revolutions start with somebody who's not in the who's who of the industry. Uh, I've been in the industry for 25 years and I try to bring new ideas, but probably it's harder and harder because I got all these habits in my head, no?
Mm.
So maybe the revolution will come from within our industry. I'm wondering if it's not going to come from somebody who brings a fresh eyes and says, "Hey, wait, guys, what are you doing?
Well,
Let me reconceive this."
I've always considered myself not really part of the meetings industry for this very reason. I've
Uh,
always considered myself as somebody as a bit of an outsider who looks at this and who is totally amazed and sees this doesn't make any sense. It really it defies common sense. What you're doing here, you can't be serious. So many big and small things. Let me give you one really small example of that. But expecting people to sit at a table during a gala dinner with 10 people around a circular table and expecting networking to take place there is a completely
yeah.
ludicrous assumption because it's noisy and you can only sit with the person sitting to the left and to the right. You will never have a good networking table conversation. And yet, all the dinners at the
Mm.
end of big meetings and events are done with these tables. Why? Simply because they come from banqueting. And there is no person in the hotel organization or no meeting planner who says, look, I don't want those tables. You come up with something better because I want 5 people to sit at a table because then they can have a conversation. And it's as simple as that, Eric, sometimes.
It's true. Yeah, you have to invent the five people table. That would be more effective networking.
Oh, yeah.
One quick reflection. Where does our industry meet? It meets in IBTM, in IMEX. What percentage of the exhibitors are fall into the logistics category? I don't know if 97 or 99%, but it's not less than that. It's you don't have any design company, a creative company. It's all about transport, hotels, venues,
Very little.
destinations.
So that is the default. And we've tried in various ways to sort of see how far and how easily we could get in. And I see that we're just not strong enough. My voice is not strong enough. This default, which is based on hospitality and logistics, is so powerful. And that's where the money is. So, often in analysis, where the money is and where the money goes determines how things work out. It's sad to say, but yeah.
Yeah, it's where the money is, and maybe also it's nice. I mean, you do something in a 5-star hotel and you have a gala dinner.
Sure.
So yeah, sure, it would be better to have another format for networking, but our industry is still about hospitality is a very nice word. It's like you're going to come, you're going to be welcome, you're going to eat well, you're going to sleep in a nice hotel.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I don't know. I mean, change is very hard for humans. I'm surprised that we survived all these centuries because we were supposed to be adaptable, and I don't know how adaptable we are. Do you see? I'm wondering if there's a phenomenon in the planners or even the client's brain, which is to start organizing an event thinking, oh, we're going to innovate a lot and we're going to change the sessions. And I'm wondering if there's not at various stages of the planning that temptation of, oh, we could just have a speaker and let people listen, and that's going to be good enough. Is there a phenomenon by which, in all the mess of planning an event, which is very complicated, which has 1,000 activities, the temptation to say, oh, I go back to default mode, I go back to the session as always, because if I innovate, I have to think of the dynamics, try it, validate it. I don't know if it's going to work. I prefer the devil we know than a possible improvement, but which is going to be risky. So is there like that permanent temptation of, hey, go back to the devil you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's and depending on how strong internally the the wish to do things more effectively, more efficiently, with better energy, is borne out by the people who need to make the decisions, and often it is an uphill struggle. But I do see changes. I do see changes taking place. And it is, for instance, in how some associations are working with their presenters and their speakers. It is how some corporations learn from their marketing department on how you can create customer experiences and how those customer experiences should also be extended to your internal customers in your own organization. Or what we just mentioned earlier on, the legacy thinking, which is borne out by destinations. You in Spain, you've got Madrid as one of the members of the Best Cities Alliance. They're thinking more in terms of, but we've got all these resources that go into the meetings. So how can those resources somehow or other benefit in the longer term the destination where we're going? So there's a lot of IMEX this year is dedicated to design. Now I wonder what's going to happen. I won't be there because there's no space in the program for me. But there is
they're trying.
They're trying. And 15 years after our book, I see that there are some changes, but the lack of an alignment between the various players in the meetings industry themselves and the fact that you have to deal with the content people who come from totally outside the meetings industry, that makes it hard.
We should never underestimate that changes take time. There's a lot of things which are invented one day and start spreading 10, 15 years later, because we want people to change their life whenever we present them with a new concept. But no, they got their habits and their way of working.
And hardware change is a lot easier than software change. So people are easier to adopt new technologies than they are to adopt different ways of dealing with other people.
But your experience, I don't know if you can in 1 minute or 1.5 summarize a meeting that you designed and that innovated quite a bit in its format, in a successful way.
Yeah, maybe a nice example is an association that I started to work with by now more than 10 years ago. And in this association, there was the Secretary General of the association who was responsible for their annual, but actually biannual flagship event. We met during an meetings industry event. He said, I want to work with you. We started with one session, 60 minutes in year one. In year three, we did 2 sessions. And they were called at the time the interactive sessions, as something which was quite revolutionary. And everybody saw that in these sessions, people were not fiddling with their phones. Everybody was focused. Everybody's working together. New relationships emerged. People who didn't know each other and who would never have talked to one another started talking to one another, and that created new insights and new ways of working for the members of the association. To make a long story short, we're now 10 years ahead. In this next edition of this same event, I'm actually taking a step back, and their organizing committee, each of the single members, after they've seen how their association has developed in the course of these 10 years, and how many more people are joining the event, because it is simply more relevant to them than it was in the past. So now they're taking the lead, and they're doing even proposals about which I sometimes say, you shouldn't be doing that, because that's probably going to go over the heads of the delegates. I understand why you want to do it, but tone it down a little bit. So the culture change within that association has been towards taking their members as serious adults who know their stuff, and not as elementary school pupils who need to sit in a chair and shut up.
Yeah. And I guess when you see it that way, the client who sees it and experiences it that way probably think, what were we doing? I mean, we were bringing these grown-up, capable people, very trained people. We were telling them to shut up and listen to the wise man. Probably there must be like an awakening, like, why didn't we do this before?
But it's a gradual process, as you say, Eric. And with this particular association, it's taken me 10 years. But it does work.
There's a concept that I would relate to that, which is the concept of collective intelligence, which most meetings doesn't garner at all, doesn't use at all. Yeah. And we know that it's amazing. Collective intelligence brings amazing new ideas, and we're just wasting a lot of meetings are just wasting that. I would like to go to your one of your new ideas, which is about sustainability. Yes. And I understand that sustainability is extremely important. You're from Northern Europe, so you can't be suspect of skepticism there about climate. But I think you say that little details of environmental sustainability, which are important, like bottles and plastic bottles and stuff like that, hide another probably bigger dimension, which is a bigger waste that you see in events. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So as you just said, Eric, sustainability has been a blessing already, and it's led to a lot of improvements. So I'm not here to minimize that or to criticize that, but I do think we need more. We need to step it up. And how can we step it up? I think the next stage is what I would call circular economy. And the circular economy is a way of looking at any kind of economic activity in terms of what is the use of resources and how can we optimize the use of resources with a view to what we are producing. Now, there's in the meetings and events business, there's two sides to that. There's the material side, and I think there's a lot of opportunities on the material side as well to improve the ratio of how much resource are we using and what are we producing as output. For instance, I think it's really silly for every conference to rebuild a whole stage setting, or for every conference center to have a full set of chairs, which then is completely limited because you only got that type of chair, and maybe for certain sessions you want a different type of chair. So thinking more modularly and thinking more in terms of supply systems rather than supply change is a way of dealing with some of the material issues. But you were hinting at the second bit, of which where the circular economy comes in. And the circular economy looks at, as I said, what resources do we use and how can we benefit the most from the deployment of those resources? And here we go back to why design is so important. Because earlier on, we touched on the fact that meetings are very resource intensive. People fly from all over the world. They go and sit in meeting rooms. They eat food. They make their time available, and that time is not capitalized on in the maximum way. So I see the biggest waste of resources in meetings is human waste, is cognitive waste, is communicative waste, where you've got 500 people sitting in a room and one person talking. Sorry, that doesn't make any sense. There should be 501 people talking most of the time. Then you use the brain power of the people who are in the room. And in today's complex world, I think there are very few areas where the one person on stage has so much more knowledge than the 500 people in the room to merit listening to that one person for 45 minutes and then going on a coffee break. Now, of course, there is an attraction for people who go to certain meetings and events of the fact that the biggest minds in that particular sector are present there. Obvious. If you've got Barack Obama on your list of speakers, you're likely to have 20% more participants. Fully agree there. But you need to pay him $500,000 for a start. But some other things are, what are people then going to do with what Barack Obama just told them? Now, that is the relevant thing, ultimately. And that is not measured. It is not known. It is not even considered as part of the equation of what the program should allow people or stimulate people or invite people to be doing. That's a bit of a long answer, but basically the point is you've got 500 intelligent people sitting in a room and you're wasting a lot of their brain power. Don't do it. Do it differently. Make sure that you can use that brain power once they're together.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the impression that the speakers are in a lot of conferences very important, but that there's always a mistake in selecting speakers, which is, oh, I want a good speaker or an interesting speaker, seeing them as kind of entertainment rather than I want a speaker which plants these three ideas that we're going to build on after so that people change. But I get the impression that few speakers are brought in to change behaviors. And I understand from you that changing behavior is the number one objective of an event, not to entertain people. And we still select speakers and we still judge speakers. When I'm at the conference, at the end, it's always like, oh, that guy was good. And if the guy was a bit funny, much better. But we don't judge, oh, this guy made me think, and tomorrow I think I'm going to do something different, no?
Yeah. So this goes back to another thing we already briefly mentioned, and that is that if you come from the side of hospitality, what you want for your meeting is people to be satisfied. So you've got satisfaction surveys, and I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And I don't think if you look at meetings and if you look at in the long term about the resource use that meetings imply, that satisfaction is a relevant criterion. I'm not interested if people are satisfied. I'm interested in finding out what's going to happen thanks to this meeting. What's the change going to be? What is What is the change in attitude, or the change in mindset, or the change in behavior, or the relationships that people have established? Um, do I think it's good enough to just open a room and, as we said earlier on, give people some coffee and hope that they're going to interact? Of course not, because we know that 50% of the people are introverts. They don't like it. They hate it. They hate to stand in a meeting room and having to go to a table and see Eric Motar and go, now I have to talk to Eric Motar. I don't know him. What shall I say? 50%
Oh,
of the
I'm so
people are
depressed.
extremely uncomfortable with that. Not just because it's you, but because in general people are uncomfortable with that. So we should help
Yeah,
them
yeah,
with
yeah.
that. And you should help
Sure.
them and there's lots of ways in which you can design for that.
Yeah. Last one, because we are short of time.
Yes.
Um, you touched on it, and in today's extremely complex and violent world, and extremely and increasingly isolated, it could be a mission of meetings and events that we don't think about, but that's going to be more and more important, which is to simply bring people together and get people to understand that the other person is different but is lovable as well, stimulate understanding. um, so do you see it today becoming a bigger objective in meetings? Is it limited to some players? I can understand that maybe an association or an NGO could have this objective, but maybe a private company considers that this is beyond their job description.
Mm.
Um, do you think a
I don't
key
think it.
element of meetings is going to be this tomorrow
Yeah.
or today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things that come to us and which initially seem a blessing, and then in due course we find out that actually there's a lot of downsides to them. I think that, for instance, social media are in some sense have been a blessing, and in many respects they're an absolute nightmare. They're a nightmare
Yeah.
for the trust between people. They're a nightmare for the way in which people can constructively communicate with one another. I've been involved in meetings in the Netherlands where we've had to solve issues in administrations because people were fighting over what they said about each other on social media. And instead of, governing the city properly, they were just firing further insults on social media to one another. So we no longer know whether what we see on screens is the truth. And there's a lot
Well,
of reasons why um, certain groups of people in the world are very happy about that.
I can
The only
understand.
way in which we can get rid of the very detrimental impact of that is actually by meeting people, looking them in the eye, and striking up relationships of trust.
Mm.
We need to rebalance the world in terms of trust. The polemics and the speed with which it is possible nowadays to destroy trust through screens
Yeah.
is tremendous. And I
Mm.
I think meetings could and should and will play a much more important role in this respect than has been necessary in the past. In the past, there was a
Mm.
scientific community, and people in the scientific community implicitly trusted each other because they were all pursuing the truth. Today, you no longer know. If you're a professor at Harvard, will you still get money to pursue the truth? Will somebody on the internet say, "Yeah, that's your truth," but
Yeah.
of course, your science is also just an opinion? This is extremely um, disconcerting and destabilizing. And as I said,
Mm.
there's a lot of people who benefit from that destabilization. But in the meetings industry, I hope that we see that we have a very powerful means in our hands, which is the physical presence of people in the same
Yeah.
space where they can have meaningful dialogues, where they can have mediated conversations through formats which can create safe spaces for people to actually re-establish trust.
Hmm. There's I don't know, there's an American president, I believe, who said, "I don't like this man. I should get to know him more." Huh?
Yes,
And and
yeah,
and this
exactly.
is probably true. No, we
Yeah,
have this idea of that person of that side of the political aisle is absolutely evil. And if you talk to them, you realize that maybe they're mistaken in their fears or in their explanations of the world, but very few people are actually bad.
Yeah,
Although
that is
these
true.
days I wonder.
Yeah, well, I think there are some evil people, and I think there's people who have very high expectations of how important their personal interests are. But aside that, the majority of people are just okay, you know. But they don't get the current ways in which people are, again, by default, helped to communicate are extremely unhelpful for creating cohesion in whatever kind of organization or society. And that applies across the board for society in general, associations, corporations, NGOs, government bodies. So I think the need for constructive conversation is what meetings offer and why they should be cherished by everybody, but properly designed. Because there, obviously, it's very nice for a person to stand on stage and to say, "We all love each other. We're all good. We're all good people. Eric Motai, you're a lovely person. I think you're great. And this person in the room is great, and that person in the room is great." But that person in the room can't even see the other person that is being mentioned from stage. So it's not creating that cohesion. To create that cohesion, people need to have conversations.
I would love it. This goes way beyond my job at Eventopus, but I would love to organize discussions with people who are completely opposed. Like somebody, Palestine is an obvious case. Politics in the US, but politics everywhere, basically.
Yeah.
And to say, well, you could get somebody from the hard left and somebody from the hard right, and probably they can. I want to believe that they can still talk, and that if we don't put them in the same room, definitely they won't talk.
Yeah.
And I experienced a few cases like this. I have my opinions on Israel and Gaza. I met somebody one day on the absolute political opposite side, and we did manage to have a conversation. You don't fully change your opinion. You'll say, "Oh, yeah, my God, you're right on everything," but you understand a few points from where they come from. Hopefully, they understand a few points from where you come from, and this humanizes both sides. And this can only happen if we meet.
Yeah, indeed. So perhaps we can start doing an experiment together on this.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
You've got your event. You've got your annual event, don't you?
Oh, we do a few events. We do like 5 events a year. We could put this within an event, or we could do a pure experiment, which doesn't have to be huge. Basically, an experiment would start with 2 people, but we could do 20 or 40, something like this, and it could be called we agree to disagree, but we still take a step towards the other person, or something like this.
And there's so many ways and formats and indeed physical experiences that you can offer people, which do create that trust. And you know, if you think and look back, originally this is what parliaments were about, and the respect for institutions helped societies to be able to work out those differences. Even they may have been huge. I mean, the ideological differences 100 years ago between hardline communists and hardline liberals were huge, but they sat in parliament together and they made sure that the country would move ahead. That today is something we need to reestablish.
Yeah. Taking into account that we all think we are 100% different from people on the other side. And actually, we agree on probably 80% of things in life. I mean, in Western societies, the key pillars of society, we agree on them. Nobody in Western societies wants to completely tear the social protection. Nobody wants to give free money to everybody. So probably we're just all shades of gray, and we think we are black and white, but we're in the end, we agree on a lot of things. Mike, it's been wonderful. Let's start planning this event and change the world.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I remind the names of your two books written with Eric de Groot.
Yeah, my partner in crime.
Meetings by default by design, or Into the Heart of Meetings. Thank you so much, Mike, and let's go for it.
Okay, great, Eric. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, I got another meeting, and you do too. I will see what we can get out of this. Maybe we can get the full audio and publish it like this. I'll let you know.
I think it was a very nice flowing conversation, and we know each other, so it was very smooth in that respect. And I think we touched on all the important issues. So thanks for that.
Yeah. And we didn't really, we touched on the concept of conversation, but it is a wonderful tool. Just talking to people is amazingly powerful, and we take it for granted, but no, it's the solution to almost our problems.
Yeah. Okay, Eric.
Take care,
have a good
Mike.
day. Thanks.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye.